Hello, listeners. So, in this episode, you'll be hearing a lot of silence, and that's because of reasons which you will hear about later in this very episode. So, I'm just going to ask you up front, bear with us as we work through illness and issues recording. So, anyway, have fun listening, and we hope to see you next week when we won't have quite as many issues or sicknesses. Thanks. Well, how does having no voice sound right now doing
Space
this?
Centric said I'm so dead.
Yeah, so for the audience, we currently are in despair. We had to postpone this week by quite a sizable amount. I mean, just by a week, because last week's recording was absolutely terrible due to technical difficulties. And this week, Darick here
Space Centric said and it def wasn't BC I forgot my headphones he.
has lost his voice due to it. So, in short, we have to deal with that noise and that specific text to speech sound, which I'm sorry, guys, but hey, we're gonna roll with it. This is gonna be a fun episode, and we're gonna have fun, guys. We are going to have fun.
Space Centric said blame Discord not my health guys.
Exactly. Discord, Discord's text to speech. It's nice that you have it. Doesn't mean that it's good. Anyway, so starting off, we got Google, the annoying, basically the annoying kid here, pushing RCS as a standard. I mean, it's a good idea that we're pushing it, but they're kind of being annoying about it, just mostly because Apple is being a little bit of a standoffish, like I will not change for anything. So basically, RCS is the most standardized competitor to iMessage. So what does that mean? iMessage.
Space Centric said they even had a whole Instagram advert against Apple.
They did. It was something. It was something. Oh yeah.
Space Centric said magical.
Yeah. What I just realized doing it this way will do is the lag between me saying something and your answer will be quite large. So
Space Centric said yeah.
just everything that Darick says, just move it back like 5
Space
seconds in your
Centric
head,
said no worries.
and it might be all good. We'll see. Yeah, we're just gonna roll with it. Moving back to the Google pushing RCS.
Space Centric said again my bad for dying guys.
Yeah, yeah. See, Darick is truly sorry for his actions of doing speaking for too long or whatever caused his
Space Centric said I am.
his deathly death voice of not having a voice.
Space Centric said coughs.
So, hopefully back to the topic. Maybe. Are we good to go back to the topic?
Space Centric said yes.
Yes. So RCS is the most standardized competitor to iMessage. So what does that mean? So iMessage itself is not just an app, it's a standard of text communication. So whenever you have a blue bubble on your Apple device, you're sending text or video or whatever over an internet service through like Apple's kind of codec or the way they encode information to kind of send it through that pipeline across the internet. RCS is another way of doing that. You can send high quality files just like you can on iMessage. Sending text via internet, you can have emoji reactions, the advanced group messaging, the whole 9 yards. But it's a standardized sort of way of doing it. So instead of you know,
Space Centric said, but its API is more universal, right?
right. So that's what RCS does. The API is more universal and it's able to be used across platforms, while iMessage can only be used on Apple platforms. So, the traditional Apple stuff. So basically, that means that really the entire superiority of iMessage doesn't actually exist. It's more that iMessage is supported by default on the iMessage app, like the default app on your phone, whereas things like RCS isn't. So really, like whenever you have a friend that's on Android and they have a green bubble, and like you have to pay per message, or you have to like whenever you send a picture, it just looks like garbage because the communication doesn't work. That's not Google's fault. That's not Android's fault. That's actually Apple's fault for not supporting the more like universal, standardized, open source way of sending information.
Space Centric said, are you trying to call me out for owning an Android?
Well, not really, because you don't blame the person on Android. You blame Apple for being stuck up.
Space Centric said, exactly.
So the entire really superiority of iMessage doesn't really exist. So there's like things like WhatsApp and things like Facebook Messenger that are super like universal outside of the US because the iPhone isn't really that much of a status symbol everywhere else. And people use those things over iMessage. They don't really care about the convenience of having their inset app or whatever their like default app is and using that. They just use other things. So like they still have the ability to do these group texts and they still have the ability to do all these other things. And like even their default app has that ability. So it's not like a special
Space Centric said, right.
But Apple has their reasons for it. They're just not being stuck up for the reason of being stuck up. iMessage is a big reason why many stay in the Apple ecosystem. It's a reason why I'm in an Apple ecosystem. That's why I have an Apple device, and actually why I have two. I have an Apple Watch and my phone, both on the Apple platform, and this is partially because the Apple Watch is currently the best watch that is still supported on the market. We know exactly where I'm going with this, or at least Mr. Darick knows exactly where I'm going next with my next sentence. The Pebble is the best watch that was ever made and still will be. It's just that it hasn't been supported and mine is disintegrating because it's like 10 years old and the sides are rubber. So I wasn't the higher end model that was completely like a metal finish on the outside never got released. And so the like most recent model that had like all of the features on the newer one, so like a microphone so it could like read your text and whatever, that was only available on this one before they went bankrupt. And it was completely open source and it was just so nice. I don't know. Since then the Apple Watch is the only one that like is half decent that has come out since then, or at least smartwatch that's, in my opinion, half decent.
Space Centric said, reduce, reuse, recycle, said the SLS.
I don't think they did say that. However, they did say we will be launching soon. Next week's going to be a blast.
Space Centric said, maybe tomorrow.
It's going to be so fun. Next week's going to be a blast. Or it's going to be a huge letdown, depending on the weather, I guess. And other things like mechanical faults and things.
Space Centric said, blast, lol, nice one.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a blast. Because rockets. Jokes. So he said, anyways, back to roasting, but he forgot to put a space between TTS and...
Space Centric said TTS failed there.
No, you failed there.
Space Centric said brew.
But Apple isn't supporting RCS because of like the reason it forces people to buy Apple products, and allegedly, and just take this with highlighted red font, bolded, underlined, just like it is in the the notes doc that we have here. Craig Federighi, the entire character of Apple, like
Space Centric said absolute legend.
complete legend. They're head of the software department, so he's the one who's basically in charge of like iOS, Apple TV OS, Mac OS, and Watch OS, like all of this like software part of Apple. He's kind of the head of all that. And in his alleged email, he said that he is concerned that iMessage on Android would simply remove an obstacle to iPhone families giving their kids Android phones. And he is not wrong. Cheaper Android phones will be a lot more cost effective and a lot like easier to give a child because if you have a broken iPhone 10, that's gonna hurt you a lot more than like a broken like I don't know like just like this random phone from who knows what.
Space Centric said to be fair though that email was sent a while back.
That is true. This email was from a while back, but like it serves as kind of insight to more of like their thought process there. But still, like it could be a little outdated. They have kind of gone through a huge like turnaround in the way they have their thinking going over there in the last few years. But the principle.
Space Centric said definitely.
Yeah, they've turned around pretty hard, and it's nice to see the direction they're going in. But the principle is still true. iMessage on Android would basically cause a lot of people to switch over to Android. Just because, like, if you're in the US and you're trying to contact literally anyone, especially if you're in high school or middle school or just in school in general, and you having a iPhone makes you a lot more accessible, makes you a lot easier to talk to because everyone is like so infatuated with being able to text over iMessage, as opposed to most other countries, everyone has WhatsApp downloaded. That's just like everyone just does that automatically, and that's just not a thing here. So truly, this is true. Like iMessage on Android would cause a big shift in iPhone versus Android, especially in the US. And this kind of comes along with like
Space Centric said keeping iMessage on iPhone is really just the best ecumenical option for Apple, but I feel like that would try, and take that with a grain of salt, pull a FaceTime-like solution too. Space Centric said Android.
Yeah. I don't know why text-to-speech just decided to not say Android.
Space Centric said I don't know why it didn't say Android.
Me neither.
Space Centric said Discord is biased.
Clearly. Which Discord is biased apparently based on this article that you sent me not really an article, it's what is this from? Whatever this is from, this post here. So take that with a bigger, massive grain of salt.
Space Centric said I don't know, my friend sent me that.
Okay, well, apparently Discord on Android is detecting as a bootleg version of the app for some reason, and like it's causing some problems with Discord API. I'm not sure if this is true. Some of this does look a little bit like untrue, or I don't know, you like copying, like porting the iOS version of an app onto Android is a little more work than it seems, but it is very much.
Space Centric said to be fair, I have a few things to say.
Yeah. But I mean, to be fair, it could be like a thing that they did. It could be like a lot easier than I'm thinking it is. So, take that with a grain of salt. Take that with maybe more than a grain of salt.
Space Centric said I was logged out of all my Discord accounts regardless of OS.
Well, that's funny. This actually might be putting a little bit more backing onto it because,
Space Centric said that was after the Android update.
Okay, that's a little weird. That kind of brings it back to like this whole like stigma around Android. The reputation of Android is kind of a product of the way, like, especially like the reputation being like a lot negative, like, oh, the experience on Android's a lot worse, mostly because it's not standardized. So,
Space
you
Centric said exactly.
right. So like in the US, there's a stigma around
Space
Android.
Centric said Android is so broad across many companies.
Exactly. You have like TVs that use Android. You have literal cars that use Android. You have like phones, watches, tablets, everything is using Android. And all of these phones also use Android, and like that comes to like the bad image quality stigma around Android, where it's like, oh, Androids have bad image quality. They don't. It's just that Android doesn't really have the standardized like ways of doing things. There's not like a simple API request to like take a picture or something. So whenever you're taking a picture, especially like on a phone, there's some post processing that happens. So it runs it through like some software things. It kind of like cleans it up, brings it together, makes things happen.
Space
So
Centric said Pixels have some of the best camera sensors on the market, beating even Apple's iPhone Pros and Maxes.
right. So like pixels, like they're what we see as like a picture coming off of a pixel actually like looks like, especially whenever you do the measurements, it looks a lot better, even though their actual like physical camera sensor in there is the same or worse in recent years. Before, I think they did the switch to the cost effective pixels, so like the Pixel 1 and 2, they have been like hardware ahead of Apple in terms of cameras, and then they kind of switched it to being more cost effective and a lot better at processing and post processing, which is like putting the full strength of Google's like data science and data AI kind of knowledge behind it. But in a similar vein, companies like Samsung, LG, they all have like hardware better cameras. The iPhone's camera, the iPhone sensor, has been the same sensor they've been using since its success. So technically, the images coming off of
Space
an
Centric
iPhone,
said exactly.
right? Like by numbers, the images coming off of an iPhone without post processing has been relatively the same since the success. What has changed is the processing and the ability to process. So even if you put the software that Apple has made since then to process these pictures and make them look better, the success won't be able to handle it because it doesn't have the hardware to support that. So that's why like they haven't been updating and making the pictures look better generationally. And also partially because, like when that's the only thing you're improving generation by generation, you kind of want to stop it stop it from like not being an incentive. So partially this and partially that. But
Space Centric said Apple just wants to increase its revenue. Hee.
yeah, especially right now, whenever like their phones lost 5 years or even longer because they're so good at keeping their things up to date. But that also comes at the cost of revenue. um,
Space
which
Centric said that's why we have ads.
exactly. So Apple has fallen a little bit to the dark side here. Apple is aiming to more than double their ad revenue. iOS news and stocks are already getting ads, and allegedly, even if you pay for Apple News, you'll be seeing potentially a few ads here and there. And this comes basically immediately after their like tracking privacy or their tracking transparency or whatever their feature is called, that tells you like this is what this app is tracking you with on the App Store. And like that doint, like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, all of which have lost like 9.85 billion total in revenue between the few. This was by a report by the Financial Times, by the way, so the number could be a little bit different, but based on this report, this is the number that we have. And it's just kind of unfair that they have like they're telling users these things about like other services, but for their own service, whenever you kind of opt into getting tracked, because for these ads, Apple is tracking you and tracking information about you to, quote, tailor your experiences or something like that. I'm not like directly quoting, but like that's usually the wording that comes with it. And they only do that with a single opt-in at setup. Like you only opt into that at setup, and you, as far as I know, you don't see that like prompt again, or you don't see that like easily and concisely in one place. However, I will say that certain apps might be showing
Space-centric said or at a new update, but I wouldn't bet it would be after the update.
Yeah. I think they do show you per app, like the first time you log onto the app, but they don't show it to you again. And it, like, going back to it and like turning that feature off is kind of like something you have to like mentally do, instead of it like you go to the app store to update the app and you immediately see, oh, this is what it's tracking me with, oh no. And you kind of see that, but with Apple's apps, it's kind of a little bit like hidden away. So is that really fair? Is that like something they should do? I don't know. I don't really feel like it. It's just like, I get that it's something you have to do, especially right now when the only thing you can make money with is software, but it's kind of stinky if you're going to like.
Space-centric said, to be fair, Apple has taken that step to highlight privacy, but the steps it's taking now are backtracking on its progress.
Exactly, like what Apple's been doing has kind of forced Google's hand into increasing its privacy features. So especially with the new Android update, we've been having a lot of like privacy features coming through on Android, and it's super nice to see. But still, this is kind of not cool on Apple's part. But we'd still like to recognize what they do for privacy in their, like, in general, for their OSs. But yeah, it's just not that great. Any additional thoughts there? I'm gonna wait a couple seconds before moving on so that we can have Darick type out his response.
Space-centric said, nope, ducks for asking, LOL.
Okay, we will go on.
Space-centric said, I meant thanks.
Oh yeah, he spelled thanks. Oh, this is gonna be fun. So, next up, kind of talking about, you know, stinky practices in terms of, hold on.
Space-centric said, jailbroken tractors, LMAO.
Yeah, jailbroken tractors. This is kind of on the same vein of like companies not doing really cool things. So, kind of background on this. Doom has been run on a John Deere tractor computer system, which doesn't appear super special at first glance, but what makes it special is the fact that John Deere is super duper anti-right to repair. And they kind of force farmers to only be able to repair and service their machinery at official locations, and software locks them out of using machinery when they self-service it, whenever they kind of do it themselves. So it's kind of forcing their hand into going to an official John Deere tractor store and doing that. Otherwise, they software lock their tractors. And apparently, this is new news that I found out recently, is that they're also software locking it for John Deeres that are in Russia. So, double-edged sword there. But it kind of wastes a lot of time for farmers. And they really have to like ship it really far away, since repair stores are kind of really few and far between. And it's just like you have to, you know, ship it like miles, like hundreds of miles away, because you're on a farm and you're like kind of in the middle of nowhere. Wait for it to get serviced, wait for it to come back, and you've probably lost 3 months of like crops, essentially. And it's just like that's not cool. So that's what makes like jailbreaking this John Deere really important. Is
Space-centric said, and that hurts revenue BC every day, month, etc. You don't have your hardware, means you're at a loss.
Exactly. So jailbreaking this John Deere is super important just because, you know, the principle of like being able to root your device and clear the software without like bricking this tractor computer means that you should be able to do that if you're trying to like repair your device, clear the computer, and just run whatever. So
Space
it's
Centric said also Doom is just a benchmark these days, I guess, lol.
yeah, Doom is always like the first thing. That's just on a jailbroken device. You're like,
Space Centric said, can your computer run Doom?
oh man, they didn't put the question mark. They didn't say that with spice. Put a question mark and 2 exclamation points.
Space Centric said no energy, sad.
Yeah, I know, it's so boring, like depressing. Anyway, next up, let's unpack Samsung Unpacked 2022. What was announced at Samsung Unpacked this year was the Z Fold and Z Flip. Both of these are basically the same, but we're kind of in the stage where all we're kind of refreshing is the specs and the cameras. So that's actually kind
Space
of
Centric said Woo's Flip and Z Fold.
Oh, Z Flip, Z Fold. They're both they're both like super cool devices and both like things that I feel like will be the future of phones, phones that fold, or I guess flip. But we're kind of in the stage where the main thing we're refreshing is specs and cameras, and that's kind of good. And I guess like at face value, it kind of seems not that great, but that means that we're kind of
Space Centric said hot take, I'd buy a Z Flip as a personal phone.
same. I would totally do that. It's just so fun, especially like stop like turning off calls. You're just like be gone.
Space Centric said exactly.
But yeah, being in the stage where all we're refreshing is the specs and cameras.
Space Centric said I can just deny your calls instantly.
True.
Space Centric said instantly.
Yeah, you can just be like, no, be gone. Also, just just quick note for the audience. I'm not on purpose. Like he's not on purpose. Like in the middle of my sentences sending things. He just that's when he finishes typing his stuff. So this is just gonna be something we're gonna have to roll with. But yeah, super good that you know they're just kind of in the stage where they're refreshing things like small things like specs and cameras because that indicates that their price is going to drop down and it's going to become something that more people can afford and it's going to be a lot more widespread because at this point like if this is the furthest you can go you can spend less on R&D, you can spend less on like this newfound hardware and kind of focus more on making sure that your manufacturing can be done faster. So yeah, it's going to be nice. Any thoughts there? Okay.
Space Centric said I just ran to get some lemons.
Oh. Using that dead voice.
Space Centric said it sounds weird, but yes, it helps with throat.
It does. Add some honey to that. You will have the best thing ever. Like the 3 best things for dead throat: lemons, honey, ginger. 3 together.
Space Centric said exactly.
We have this like lemon ginger tea that we put, and I put honey in it. And whenever I have like a dead throat, I drink it, and it's just like pure like okay, I can maybe live now. Next up, the nothing
Space
phone.
Centric said anyways I probably should have asked what I missed while I was getting lemons, lol, that sounds weird.
Yeah, I think you missed just Samsung Unpacked, just Z Flip. Pretty much it.
Space Centric said very sad, I love Z Flip.
Yeah, Z Flip is pretty cool. It's my favorite out of the 2, just because I like having like something that's really small and compact. Just like not having to deal with this giant phone.
Space Centric said, but hey, nothing phone maybe no. Any excitement?
I have nothing. Yeah, nothing to see here. It looks cool,
Space
spec-wise.
Centric said, good one.
Well, there's nothing really to see here. Just looks cool, spec-wise, fairly middle of the road. An older processor, so this kind of allows the price to be brought down with the performance not taking that much of a hit if you're going for like a mid-range processor. Kind of sits squarely in the one plus like cost territory, and this time it's more of a style of
Space Centric
enthusiast.
said, audience, that was meant as a friendly insult, but TDS didn't read the periods I added.
Yeah. There's no. Do you have to do
Space
tone
Centric said
indicators?
his jokes are something to listen to, okay?
True. I'm great at jokes. Great at jokes.
Space Centric said, yeah.
Oh my gosh, this text to speech, man. But yeah, style over enthusiast this time for Carl Pay. Not much else. They probably will become a big player in the smartphone industry because they're pretty fun. But I mean, what else? Oh, right, their website. Last week, whenever we did our first recording of this episode, we looked at their website and it looked absolutely dismal. I remember you had some things to say
Space
about
Centric said, I'm going to run and get more lemons, but I just remembered the website like you said, ugh.
Yeah, it was just terrible. The font that they had,
Space Centric said, a lot of pain.
was not it. The the font was terrible. I mean, the rest of the website was alright, but the font was so bad that it just ruined the rest of this website, like, considerably. Ugh, so bad. Yeah, ugly. But if you are a web developer that worked on the Nothing site, which I highly doubt you're listening to this podcast, but if you are, I mean, the rest of the website looks nice. It's just that the font that probably they end up making you use, because I definitely don't think you chose to do that font. Just not it. Not it. The rest of the site, not bad. The font, mm-mm, mm-mm, not it. Next up, the CHIPS bill. It's basically to fund American-based chip manufacturers. So let's just take a wild, I don't know, not a wild guess, but more of like just do some thinking here. Okay, so American-based chip manufacturers. So who makes chips? Well, we have Global Foundries, we have Intel, we have TSMC, we have Samsung. Out of those companies, which ones manufacture in the U.S. and which ones have a large presence? Okay, let's start looking at the U.S.-based ones. Intel is based in the U.S. and Global Foundries is based in the U.S., but Intel is the main one that is actually being manufactured in the U.S. Does that I mean, that just means that this CHIPS bill mostly is to the benefit of Intel, at least currently in this situation. And of course, that is verified because this bill was passed as due to lobbying by Intel. But it is good. It's not just super selfish move by Intel. It's also to ease the effects of the trade war and the chip shortage on American chip
Space
companies.
Centric said, I'm back but no lemons. I have rice and fish instead, so now this podcast is a scuffed mukbang, lol.
Well, fish and lemons, or no, rice and fish. What did I say? Fish and lemon? No, rice and fish is good, in my opinion. Very good. But yeah, the chips bill just kind of, yeah.
Space Centric said, anyways, Intel, right?
Yeah, the chips bill mostly kind of favors Intel in this current market, but it's good in some ways because it eases the effects of the trade war on the chip shortage, and also leads some incentive to companies like Samsung or Global Foundries to kind of bring some of their production over to the US and, kind of give a boost to American manufacturing. So that's kind of good. But in its current state right now, mostly helps Intel. And
Space-centric said if only it helped with Arc and Arc Pro getting back on ground.
yeah, yeah, the chip spill will help the U.S. compete with Chinese chip manufacturing. But I don't think Intel was ready for this. Just the headline name for this headline. I'm sure Darick appreciates that headline very much. But yeah, the Intel Arc and Arc Pro and their launch.
Space-centric said no, why I didn't even read it until now. Space-centric said pain.
For our listeners, the headline was they aren't ready for it. Or they aren't ready for it yet. But the pre-launch for Arc GPUs was rather trash.
Space-centric said, brew, I'm in cringe right now.
Yeah.
Space-centric said both with Tot and Arc.
Yeah, it's an appropriate amount of cringe for the amount of terrible the Arc Pro or the launch of Arc was. It had no clear path to roll out. Board partners were completely in the dark. A lot of them pulling out of the program altogether. And there was issues with graphics and graphics drivers that plagued its development and caused, setback after setback after setback after setback. And it was just really, really stinky for development. So Intel did the smart thing to do and announced their Arc Pro in the middle of this, just terrible, just raining down of just bad, terrible.
Space-centric said BC, that's an Apple thing to do, LOL.
Just if you're just in the middle of a terrible launch, sure, the best thing to do at that point is to launch your Pro version. And it's just really, I feel like you need to go back and work on Arc.
Space-centric said Apple TV Plus moment.
Dude, Apple TV Plus is so stupid. Who watches that? Who even watches that?
Space-centric said I hate it.
It's so stupid.
Space-centric said I specifically hate For All Mankind.
Yeah, that one. That one. That one. The only shows that I've heard people watching off of that was Ted Lasso and what's the other one? The Good Morning Show or whatever, the one with Steve Carell. Who is watching this? Why does it exist?
Space-centric said me trying to type while coughing with rice in my mouth hurts. Space-centric said, but yes, boo For All Mankind.
It's so stupid. But yeah, Arc Pro future not looking so good. It's gonna take a lot of work to get up and running, but I mean, my
Space-centric said it makes me hate shuttle, and that's very impossible.
Dude, oh my gosh. The shuttle was so cool.
Space-centric said they screwed it up so bad.
Man, I didn't even watch it. I already
Space-centric said, but yes, Intel.
Yes. Yeah, the future looks bleak. It's going to take a lot of work for them to get back up and running. But
Space-centric said also to clear up, I love Shuttle. Shuttle fan club.
Shuttle's so cool. But yeah, future looking bleak. I said that probably 3 times already, saying their future looks bleak. But I really hope that they get off the ground, because the more competition, the better the prices are, huh? speaking of better prices, Nvidia, who reportedly told investors that they're dealing
Space Centric said, oh god.
minus level segues, huh? Uh, they reportedly told investors that they're dealing with an excess inventory of 30 series graphics cards, and you know what that means. Decrease our prices! And 30 series GPUs might actually be becoming affordable. And they seem to be preparing for 40 series, which will be launching fairly soon.
Space Centric said, and then 40 series he sigh.
Yeah, yeah. That's gonna be, I mean, hopefully,
Space Centric said soon trademarked.
yep, yep. Um, so yeah, might be able to get GPUs sometime soon. In other news, kind of more gaming focused news here, the Steam Deck 2, the booklet that announced Valve's expansion into the Asian market with Steam Deck, outlines the reasons for bringing V1 to the market. It projects a second Steam Deck coming some point in the future. That means that the Steam Deck has been doing well enough, if this hasn't been obvious.
Space Centric said, I love Steam Deck.
It's so good. It is so good. It's a really nice idea, and I like the way they did it, and just like it being upgradable, it being like so like user friendly. It's just a really cool like thing that they did, and it's just
Space
really
Centric
nice.
said, if only Nintendo had a rumored Switch Pro he.
Man, that Switch Pro thing has been going on for a long time. I think it eventually just became the Switch OLED for Switch Pro, but I don't know. Hopefully the Switch like something they do something with the Switch before like fairly soon. Yeah, this shows that Valve is confident with the Steam Deck and shows that they have a projected future.
Space Centric said, before Steam Deck takes over LOL.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like Nintendo hardware is so underwhelming. The only thing that's keeping them alive, like, in general, is their, like, super good games, because they're proprietary. Also, like, they're super good at portable devices, or portable gaming devices, because they have that down. They have that down.
Space Centric said, wait, who?
Nintendo.
Space Centric said, oh.
The delayed response, kind of funny.
Space Centric said, I was thinking Ioneo.
Oh yeah, the Ioneo. So, background for the listeners, the Ioneo is basically it's kind of like the Steam Deck before the Steam Deck. It was a Kickstarter campaign. It basically did all the things the Steam Deck does. It was basically a PC in the Switch form factor, and it did all of that, like just cool stuff that you'd expect.
Space Centric said it's basically a Switch-sized-ish handheld gaming PC.
Yeah, in the same like category as the Steam Deck. It ran Windows, so that means it was kind of not super well optimized, but you know it did everything that you needed it to do, and it's a pretty good like competitor.
Space Centric said, with like better specs than Switch but worse than Steam Deck.
Yeah, because the Steam Deck has like the backing of Valve, which is like a massive company. The Ioneo is like super small company, but you know it's a alternative to consider for sure. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I guess
Space Centric said, but honestly Steam Deck has really good prices.
Yes, he said prices. Prices, by the way. I don't know why I said prices. It has really good prices, and it's a super good, you know, way to
Space
go
Centric
for
said,
gaming.
no, I said prices.
Price.
Space Centric said, Getty writes of N.
Okay. Me confused. Text to speech doing a 2 out of 10 job today.
Space Centric said I was trying to roast you.
Oh, man. It's hard to read tone with this text. I could read it better just by reading the text
Space
instead of
Centric said
listening
it'll
to
be
it.
RGHT back.
Okay. While Darick frantically finds ways to fix his voice, vaguely, or just fix his throat, we will be talking about the Logitech Tencent Steam Deck competitor. It will be cloud-based, meaning it will require the internet, and it's with Tencent, which is China-based, so you take that as you will. But, with the weight of Logitech and how big Logitech is in the gaming industry, this could be a very good competitor. It just is kind of up to time to see how that will go. And it's a very different approach too. It's a interesting and different approach to doing a handheld PC gaming device. Instead of it being, on device software or on device hardware, where all of the hardware that you have is just directly on the device, and it has to be cooled, and it has to deal with the processing power. Instead, it has kind of bare bones software that connects to a cloud computing, unit, basically like a computer that's attached to the internet that kind of is wired to your Steam Deck. And it does all the processing on there, and it just basically feeds a video stream to your Steam Deck. So all your Steam Deck is doing is just being a monitor to this computer. And that's a very interesting and different way of doing it, and that's kind of the way Google Stadia and GeForce Now, if I'm remembering correctly, and most of these game streaming platforms work. So, judging by the way Logitech is, and Tencent, even though it's China-based, they're known for games like PUBG, so they should be able to churn out something that may be pretty good. So it'll be up to time to see where that goes. Next up, the Meta headset is coming in October. Moving on, the Google Duo and Meet are doing something. Google Duo is back as basically a link to Google Meet.
Space Centric said I'm back from explaining Turkish cotton. I don't know what I even did.
Turkish cotton? I'm so lost. But yeah, Google Duo and Meet are...
Space Centric said it's a project my brother is doing apparently.
Oh. Okay then.
Space Centric said anyways EU Google projects.
Yeah. Google Duo is back as basically a link to a new Google Meet, while Google Meet is something different. I don't know how this even works. I don't have an Android, so I can't test it, but this is weird. Just, I don't know. Google.
Space Centric said so the original Meet is around as Meet Original.
Okay.
Space Centric said and Duo links to the new Meet.
Okay, so why can't they just be one thing?
Space Centric said but all the Meets still exist along with Duo.
Okay. I'm so lost. I'm so lost. It's so
Space Centric said I don't know, man.
It's Google needs to figure out what they're doing with their projects.
Space Centric said I used to use Meet with Gmail Sue.
It's just like, Google, you need to have to figure out your stuff. Make things make sense. Nothing makes sense here. This,
Space Centric said please.
It's just like, you have a project and you have 3 other projects that are doing the same thing, and you're surprised that they're taking market share from each other. So you merge them, but you don't completely merge them. You still have like 2 different groups. But then the 2 different groups, one just says, oh, we'll just link to each other. And then they just end up like switching places. It doesn't make sense. This is why Stadia failed. Figure stuff out. Just have staying power.
Space Centric said, wait, remember the conversation we had about Stadia the other week when I found the website still exists?
Oh my gosh.
Space Centric said, wow, the timing.
Like, really? Really? Why does Stadia exist? Why does the website still exist? Just like, what is it doing?
Space Centric said, I think it gives you a demo.
Why would you ever want to demo Stadia?
Space Centric said, like 30 minutes per game for free.
Still not worth it.
Space Centric said, let me find it.
Okay. Let's see. In the meantime, let's cover Netflix. Oh, never mind.
Space Centric said, see?
That is weird. Why is that still there? What is the point? Why? So you can play an hour of certain games before even creating your Stadia account. I mean, that's a decent way to sell it, but that should be to our listeners, don't get Stadia. Just kidding. It might be a good deal.
Space Centric said, but like ID take advantage of that really fast.
Same. Just apart from joking around, that's actually kind of cool.
Space Centric said, incognito moment.
True. Let's cover this topic. Netflix having games.
Space Centric said, coughs.
Yeah, this episode is kind of running a little bit shorter than last week, so we're gonna go back to a topic we discarded.
Space Centric said that was both ironic and bad timing.
Bad timing. Waiting for the response to be typed up.
Space Centric said, yeah, I coughed as you said Netflix games.
But yeah, nobody's noticed.
Space Centric said, but it was an actual cough.
See, that serves as a hint to the kind of quality you would expect from Netflix gaming. But apparently nobody's noticed that Netflix had games up until basically just now. But I've seen games around Netflix for a while.
Space Centric said, I thought you were about to roast my video production.
The one for the competition?
Space Centric said, no. Space Centric said, when you were about to roast Netflix.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, nobody's noticed until basically just now. But it's basically a way for Netflix to retain its subscribers since, they're losing huge amounts of people to Disney Plus and other studio-made services because they're losing all their content to Disney Plus and other studio-made services. But they have a small handful of games, not a whole lot, and the idea is kind of just to sustain breaks between releases of seasons and movies of their shows. So basically, they're trying to make it so that you don't drop your Netflix subscription in between seasons of Stranger Things. Which, I mean, fair, but really? Games? Who would play these? Why? What's the point?
Space Centric said, honestly, I've never watched Stranger Things.
Really? You should.
Space Centric said, I probably just upset everyone.
Nah, there's some takes on it too. I like it, but there's some weird plot isms with it. I just wish they'd like kill off a main character for once. Because they keep like almost killing them.
Space Centric said go take your movie and show reviews to Marcus. Space Centric said or LTT.
Just like, hey guys, this is the movie. What do we think? Put a space there.
Space Centric said LTTSOR.com.
LTTSOR.com, guys. The Linus Tech Tips SOR.
Space Centric said bro.
But yeah, they just released their backpack and their screwdriver. Congratulations to those guys. I think both are...
Space Centric said just visit dbrand.com at this point.
True, screw the screwdriver and the backpack. Just go get a D-brand skin. They're not as expensive. They're probably a lot better. I think we're down.
Space Centric said honestly if they call Abed for a screwdriver skin LMAO.
Dude, that would be cool. That would actually be cool. Last topic for the day. I stole a headline from next week. The Starlink T-Mobile partnership. So basically, SpaceX's Starlink 2 will soon be able to connect directly to T-Mobile customers' phones at a speed of 2 to 4 megabits per second. So it's kind of more good in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of the point of Starlink. So whenever you're kind of trekking in the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere, you know, living off the fat of the land.
Space Centric said slow but fast for areas who have limited access to internet.
Exactly. So if you're living off the fat of the land, if you know what book I'm talking about, I'm sorry. But yeah, it's good whenever you're kind of in the middle of nowhere and you like need quick access to something to just quickly call or text someone, or if you're ever in the need of in an emergency situation. It's good to have the access to this technology, being able to connect to Starlink's network and just, make that quick call and be done with it.
Space Centric said I'm just really interested in how existing customers with T-Mobile will get access to Starlink. Like, do they have to upgrade, or do they just get it regardless of plan,
Yeah, that is something that's really interesting, because as much as I'd like it to be something where it's just flat added to every plan, I feel like the novelty of it and like the whole idea of it makes it almost like it's going to be something that you have to pay extra for, which I don't like that, but I don't know. You have to wait and see how that goes, but hopefully.
Space Centric said at the same time though, it's Elon, so we don't know what will happen.
Yeah, he's just gonna do it. He could just be super like, okay, we will not do this unless you like add it flat to everyone's plan, or he could also be like, we need to make X amount of money off of this, so you need to not have it flatly added to everyone's plan. So you never know what happens. Stuff will happen, and opinions will be based off.
Space Centric said stop tracking my jet and he'll give you Starlink free. Space Centric said you know that headline, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that one like kid who tracked his jet at some point, and he gave him something. Did he give him Starlink? Is that actually what he gave him?
Space Centric said the kid literally wants a free ride so he can stop tracking him.
Oh. We're going to talk more about like the space part of this headline next week, because as much as I would have liked to steal a Space Week headline, I would kind of like to keep it to the sort of tech Space Week kind of theme here. So in terms of the technology, it will be interesting to see how they like manage to connect phones to the satellite service. So would that require like phones being directly like able to access the satellite, or like is it like something
Space Centric said right, and next week we'll have a guest speaker too, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, it will be super fun. We're gonna have fun. He's gonna have a voice. It's gonna be super interactive. We might actually like record it correctly, so we don't have to postpone it. It's gonna be great, guys.
Space Centric said okay, he'll have a better voice.
Okay, yeah. maybe slightly better, maybe a whole lot better. We'll see how it goes.
Space-centric said maybe not a good but def better.
Yes. But yeah, next week's gonna be a blast, guys. Literally. But yeah, in terms of technology, I am interested to see how they have these things connected. If it's like the satellites are in low enough orbit to where phones can connect that to them directly, or if it's something where you need to have like a middleman kind of like get the okay, yeah. So do we need like a middleman to get the signal from the satellite to your phone, or is it like something where your phone can connect directly to it? So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of build this out and make it happen. But yeah, and also it'll be interesting to see how they price tier it, how it's going to cost to have this feature either added, or if it's just going to be like something that's added linearly to every single plan, or if it's just going to be added to existing higher tier like existing plans. So there are many ways this thing could go, and there's many ways like space-wise this thing could go that we're going to discuss next week. So yeah, we're just gonna chill for a little bit.
Space-centric said yeah next week.
Yes. Yeah, I think we've covered all of our topics for today. Do you have anything pressing?
Space-centric said at least I'm not editing this episode LOL.
Oop, I gotta edit this. Okay. Yeah, so I think we've covered all of our topics. Is there anything you'd like to discuss?
Space-centric said that wraps up everything from me like Ao said.
Okay, well, thank you for listening this week. Sorry for this.
Space-centric said LOL I spell that raps wrong.
Yeah, I spelled it with an R.
Space-centric said and yes sorry everyone.
Yeah, sorry guys. We were kind of saddened that this episode couldn't have been interactive as the last one recorded. But I mean, we still have an episode, so that's something good at least. But yeah.
Space-centric said yay.
Yeah, at least we have an episode this week. It would have been very likely.
Space-centric said even if I'm in pain.
Yeah. even if Darick's in pain, we still have an episode coming out.
Space-centric said both with your jokes and my throat.
Yeah.
Space-centric said got M.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of sucks that this episode wasn't as interactive as the last one, because the last one went for like an hour and a half, and it was like three less.
Space-centric said yay.
But you know, we covered most of the same things, and we still had good discussion, even though we had this weird text-to-speech thing going on.
Space-centric said just without my voice sad.
Yeah, sadness, depression. But you know, it's great that you guys have listened this far, and we hope to see you next week, where we will have a guest coming, as you've heard, and we'll be talking about a lot of things, especially with SLS launching pretty soon. So stay tuned, guys, and thank you for watching.
Space-centric said bye everyone, have a great week and go SLS and Artemis.
Woo!